Florida football is coming off a thrilling Week 1 victory over Utah, and they jump from unranked to number 12 in the nation. Billy Napier has Florida receiving a ton of hype right now, and the sky could honestly be the limit for the team. They have a dark horse Heisman contender at quarterback, the fans and the boosters are now believing in Coach Napier, and they have a manageable schedule to have a huge season. In today's video, we're going to talk about the Florida Gators, talk about how they got to this point, my thoughts on them for the future, and my takeaways from this weekend's game. But right before we can get into it, nearly 80% of you guys are not subscribed to the channel, and you don't want to miss out on all the content coming your way, so be sure to hit that subscribe button, leave a like to support the algorithm, and turn on notifications so you never miss when I do upload. Now let's get started and talk about Florida football. In order to understand how Coach Napier got to this point, we first need to go back in time. It's been a very interesting last 15 years for Florida, as they won a national title with Urban Meyer and Tim Tebow, and have had some really dark times as well. They've pretty much been all over the place. Now let's first go back to the post-Meyer era and their first coach, Will Muschamp. After Will Muschamp blew up at Texas, he was named the head coach after Meyer, and expectations were very high for him. 2011 was the first year of the Muschamp era, and it was a weird season. The Gators ended up going 7-6, where they won the Gator Bowl. At the time, their quarterback was John Brantley, and both Jacoby Brissett and Jeff Driscoll were the backups. In case you forgot, Jeff Driscoll was the #1 quarterback in the class of 2011, so he had an unbelievable amount of hype when he finally took over. It was no coincidence that when he started, Florida got better, as in 2012, Muschamp's Gators went 11-2, where they eventually lost in the Sugar Bowl. I clearly remember all the Driscoll hype, but that fell apart rather quickly. In 2013, Driscoll got hurt and Tyler Murphy took over at quarterback, and this led to a ton of losses. The team ended up going 4-8, and now Muschamp was on the hot seat going into 2014. If you're a head coach at Florida, missing a bowl is not an option. How did the team end up doing? Well, they got a little bit better. Both Driscoll and Trayon Harris were the starting quarterbacks, but after a couple of early season losses, Muschamp was fired. The team ended up going 7-5, and DJ Durkin served as the interim head coach. After the Muschamp era was the Jim McElwain era. McElwain really got his start as an assistant under Nick Saban at Bama before he took the head coaching job at Colorado State. After a couple of great years there, he made the move back to the SEC and took over in 2015. This time the Gators had a new quarterback. Trayon Harris was benched pretty quickly, and this is when we saw the rise of Will Grier. Will Grier was also a 5-star coming out of high school, and when he took over, the team won a lot of games. Unfortunately, as we all know though, he got in trouble for using a banned substance and was suspended the remainder of the season. This did not seem to affect the Gators that much though, as they ended up going 10-4 and got to the SEC Championship, where they eventually lost in the Citrus Bowl. Yeah, the ending of the season wasn't great, but they would have Grier back in 2016, right? Wrong. Grier ended up transferring to West Virginia, and they'd once again have to find another starting quarterback. This time they looked to the transfer portal. Luke Del Rio transferred in from Alabama, and Austin Appleby transferred in from Purdue. Both of them pretty much saw equal playing time, and neither of them were very good. Despite that, Florida still ended up going 9-4, where they won the SEC East again and got to the SEC Championship game. This time they ended up winning the Outback Bowl, where they would beat Iowa. So far, McElwain had won the East 2 years in a row, so it didn't seem like his seat was very hot, but just a couple of games into 2017, he would be fired. During the 2017 season, we saw true freshman Felipe Franks play at quarterback, and they also brought in Malik Zaire from Notre Dame. The most notable moment from the 2017 season was probably when Franks had that game-winning Hail Mary against Tennessee, but besides that, it was ugly. McElwain was fired after a 4-7 record, and Randy Shannon was made the interim coach. We have now gone through the first 2 coaches, so now they finally found their guy, right? No again. This time they brought in Dan Mullen, who was the defensive coordinator under Urban Meyer, and he had spent nearly a decade at Mississippi State. He was known for developing talent, having a good offense, and getting to bowl games, so it seemed like a ball and glove-like fit for Florida. In Mullen's first year, Franks would be the starting quarterback, and the team would go 10-3, where they won the Peach Bowl. They were as highly ranked as number 6 in the country, and there was once again lots of hype for 2019. The team would end up going 11-2, but it would be a very interesting season. A couple of games in, Felipe Franks would go down for the season against Kentucky, and backup quarterback Kyle Trask would take over. This is probably Dan Mullen's best find, as he was a backup quarterback in high school and was only a 3-star player. The coaching staff got the most out of him as he developed into one of the top quarterbacks in the country, and then there was unbelievable hype for 2020. Not only did they return Trask, but they had the best tight end in the country in Kyle Pitts, they had a future first-round receiver in Kadarius Toney, and they had a couple of good running backs as well. This, in my opinion, was the best Gators team of the last decade, but as we know, they lost early to Texas A&M, had the famous shoe game against LSU, barely lost to Alabama in the SEC Championship, and then got embarrassed by Oklahoma in their bowl game. Mullen's off-the-field antics were starting to annoy people, and with how he underachieved with the 2020 team, there was fire under his seat for the 2021 campaign. He'd now have a quarterback battle between longtime backup Emory Jones and newfound freshman Anthony Richardson, and Jones proved to be nothing more than a game manager. Besides their victory over Tennessee and a close loss to Alabama, Florida did not do a whole lot in 2021. Emory Jones wasn't very good, the defense gave up a lot of points, they weren't winning games, and everyone had lost full faith in Mullen. After Missouri converted a walk-off 2-point conversion, they fired Mullen the next day, and Greg Knox was named the interim head coach, and he coached their bowl game. The Gators went 6-7, and they'd once again be filing for a new head coach. So who would they bring in? They got Billy Napier. If you've been a fan of the channel, I have been talking about this guy for the last 3 years and how he was my favorite up-and-coming coach in the country. That's why I was super excited when he was hired to be the next head coach at Florida, because I knew he was going to do a good job and he'd have the proper resources to live up to the hype. He has one of the biggest staffs in the country, has a no-nonsense approach, and I personally thought was going to turn Florida around quicker than people thought. Would that be the case though? Well, he did exactly what the fans wanted and made Anthony Richardson the starting quarterback. He upgraded the running back position, brought in much needed help at receiver and on the offensive line, and he was more of a defensive-minded coach in general, so he was going to turn around that side of the ball. Expectations were decently high for the team this year, as many expected them to make a bowl game or maybe compete for that second or third place spot in the East. Their first game would be a tall task for a first-time head coach, as Utah would come to town. Utah had a weird 2021 season, as they weren't really talked about the first half of the season, but after they got hot in the second half of the season, they went to the Rose Bowl and almost beat Ohio State. That's why they were picked to win the Pac-12 this year and were ranked number 7 in the country. Many expected Utah to win by a touchdown, but also there was good reason to predict an upset. They ended up winning 29-26, and despite letting Utah go down the field in the last minute, they made a game-winning interception, and Florida ended up winning 29-26. In that game, the swamp was packed, and Anthony Richardson started his Heisman campaign. He combined for nearly 300 yards with 3 touchdowns, all 3 of which came on the ground. Richardson is a guy who not only can throw the rock, but he can also run the ball, and he is really difficult to stop. In terms of the ground game, both Trevor Etienne and Montrell Johnson did a great job at the running back position, and Ricky Pearsall and Xavier Henderson were the 2 main receivers, as pretty much everyone expected. The defense only surrendered 26 points and made that game-winning play, so it looks like things are headed in the right direction. The one thing I am worried about now is that Florida's getting too much hype. They went from unranked to number 12 in the country, and that seems a little bit much for me. I think Utah was a little bit overrated, and there's no reason to bump Florida up that much. My personal theory is that they're trying to make the Kentucky game this upcoming weekend a bigger deal than it is, just like they did with Notre Dame and Oregon. In terms of my thoughts on Florida moving forward, I am actually very optimistic. I love Anthony Richardson at quarterback, I obviously love Coach Napier, they have some good weapons in the running back and receiving room, and it seems like they can go toe-to-toe with a lot of SEC teams on the offensive and defensive line. When we take a look at their schedule, we're going to find out a lot in the next couple weeks. This upcoming weekend, they play Kentucky at home, and this will be one of the bigger games in the swamp in the last few years. Right now, Kentucky is the favorite to be second in the East, and with this win, Florida could surge ahead and solidify themselves as one of the teams that compete with Georgia for the SEC East title. Personally, I think they're going to win this game, and then I think they're going to win their following game against South Florida. After that, they go on the road to Tennessee, and that is a very difficult game to pick. I'm very high on this year's Tennessee team, and I don't think Florida has the depth or talent yet to win that game, so that's when I think they'll lose their first game. After that, though, they have 3 wins, as they're definitely going to beat Eastern Washington, they'll likely beat Missouri, and also likely beat LSU. That puts them at 6-1 going into the game against Georgia, which unfortunately I will say is a loss, and I also think they're going to lose against Texas A&M the weekend after that. That now puts them at 6-3, but luckily enough for them, I have them winning their last 3 games against South Carolina, Vanderbilt, and Florida State to finish with a 9-3 record. If Tennessee finishes the season like I think they will, then that means Florida will finish 3rd in the East, and they're likely going to make a pretty good bowl game. Overall, it seems the fan base is very excited about what Coach Napier is doing. The Gators have a ton of hype right now, and it's going to be very interesting to watch over the next few weeks. But what do I know? If you're a Florida fan, give me your thoughts on Coach Napier so far, what your expectations for the season are, and let me know any other topic I can cover in my next video. Also, don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you're new, leave a like if you want to support what I'm doing here, and check out all my other videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.